in numerology, when you're looking at karmic numbers, you always want to look at the one, the first number will always say that's you. Okay. What were you selfish about? So in your case, the six, now we're looking at everything the six stands for. So you touched on betrayal, which is the lesson of the six,
Yeah.
right? So there's going to be lessons around loyalty, but it ultimately is an abuse of love from a past life. And how it shows up in this life, most commonly in Western civilization, I see it show up as almost a marker sometimes for divorce. They struggle in relationships because the seven can be quite secretive. And that secretiveness comes off to the other person in the relationship, like you're hiding something or you're not being forthcoming. And that's not a strong foundation. So, with that abuse of love from a past lifetime, things are going to happen to you that can be hard on your heart.
So, hello, 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 beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of the Numerology Show. I'm your host, Hayden Crawford, and today I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by one of the brightest lights in the world of modern numerology, Joy Woodward. Hello, Joy, how are you today?
Hello, Hayden. Thank you. I'm
Oh,
excited.
I'm excited as well. Well, Joy is, as I mentioned, an acclaimed numerologist. She's an author of the best-selling book, which is called A Beginner's Guide to Numerology. And she's also the founder of The Joy of Numerology as well. Her fresh, intuitive, and down-to-earth approach has helped thousands of people align with their life path, unlock their soul's purpose, and manifest their highest potential as well. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or just dipping your toes into the magical world of numbers, this episode is packed with insights that will help you to be able to really understand your destiny in a whole new light. So, make sure that you relax, grab a cuppa, and let's dive into the magic of numerology with the fabulous Joy Woodward. So, Joy, what I'd like to find out from you to begin with is your journey into numerology, please, and what drew you into this ancient art, and when did you know it was your calling?
Hey. Um, well, I actually had a very long, very fabulous corporate career. And one day I got a numerology reading and I was completely intrigued, and it started a soul quest. And I went and got every numerology book I could find and started reading. I found myself a mentor. I thought it was a cool party trick. I never thought this was a career or a job that I would write a book. I could not have possibly ever thought that. I was sort of high on the corporate ladder and deep in the spiritual closet, totally, materially successful, but spiritually unfulfilled. So when, things just happen. And I actually had a career realignment. I was fired. Best thing that ever happened to me. And the universe just started bringing me clients. And that's the rest is history. I found myself a mentor. I took a bunch of certifications. I was very lucky. It was very downstream.
Yeah, 100%. And that's wonderful, isn't it? It's so interesting that your path actually mirrors mine in a lot of ways, in the fact that you left the corporate world and were almost like guided into the whole world of numerology without really understanding the reasons why, and that it was ultimately happening for you and not to you. But it can be quite a scary transition, taking that leap of faith from the corporate world and into something that's, really quite an unknown subject in a lot of cases. A lot of people don't even know what numerology is. So how did you find people responded to you when you took that leap?
Yeah, well, I remember a particular party. I had a friend who was having a birthday, and I started watching people at this party and observing them. And, one of them gave a really thoughtful gift, and I was like, oh, she must be a six. And then, someone else thought he was hilarious. He was laughing at his own jokes. And I thought, oh, that guy's got to be a nine. And I couldn't help myself. And I started asking people when their birthdays were and giving little impromptu readings. And I actually had a little bit of a lineup for me. People were kind of lingering, me next, me next. And my husband, who is a human calculator, much better at math in his head than I am. I would just kind of feed him numbers and he would add them up for me. And then I would just tell people based on what this number was. And I remember him saying, you got to start charging for this shit. Like, people care, people love this. And so he was actually much more supportive and he called me a numerologist long before I called myself one. So that support really made a difference.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's so true. Once people engage with numerology and they see how profound the insights are, it intrigues them because they feel that truth, that resonance of the truth within their own numbers, within their heart, don't they? I think, and it lends it a lot of credibility. So we were kind of just before we started the podcast today, we were discussing each other's kind of numerology charts, weren't we? And we looked at your birth chart. So you come up as being a day number 9 because you were born on the 27th, and I know you call it something slightly different. So in your book, A Beginner's Guide to Numerology, which obviously is become a go-to resource. It's a best-selling book on Amazon. What do you call the day number, and how and what purpose does that give you?
I'm very grounded in true Pythagorean formulas and how it's named. And so it's frustrating for me when I'm watching, seeing things on Instagram, or I stay off of TikTok because that will make me crazy. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so I know sometimes people call the birthday number a gift number. I simply call it the birthday number.
Okay, great. So you call it the birthday number. So what value or what influence does that have over somebody in staunch Pythagorean numerology?
You make me sound uptight, like like the Karen of numerology. Karen comes out as a 4, by the way. So for what was the question? Was what does that mean? Oh, for the 27/9, 27 is actually a really interesting number. It has a little more information before that final reduction to a 9. But your birthday number is always going to give you your natural gifts and talents. And so it impacts career, hobbies, different things of that nature, but it's really where your natural talents lie.
Great. I love that. Great. So yours being the 27, it's interesting because when you add up all the numbers in my date of birth, it comes to 27 before you reduce it to the 9. So we share that 27 energy. What does that mean?
Well, 27 is a really special number. And I think people sort of don't give it a lot of thought, but would assume there's the same number of people born on any given day, but there isn't. So I encounter a lot more 13 birthdays or 28 birthdays than I do 27 birthdays. When I do come across a 27, whether it's from the life path total or destiny number before that final calculation, or definitely a birthday number, the 27 and which becomes a 9 holds the key to those 3 most intuitive numbers in the numerology profile. So you've got the 2, which is that direct connection, super sensitive. They make great mediums, angel communicators. You've got the 7, which their intuition cannot be underestimated. It's such a spiritual force, and they really can tap into their intuition in nature, and water is where they get a lot of their messages. And then the 9, where they get a lot of their information from past life kind of remembrance. past lives and, just a general knowing. And so when you put those together, they really triangulate um, an incredible opportunity for intuition development. It doesn't mean just because you have the 27, you're going to be, a magical oracle. But when it does show up in a chart, it is definitely a sign that you should pursue some type of intuitive development because it's a natural gift for you.
I love that. And it's interesting because I think that there is this resonance of when we're talking about past lives of the seven energy and even the nine energy of Atlantis
Yeah.
and also Lemuria as well, as we discussed, in our last conversation. So, would you like to delve a little bit more into, how the numbers, sort of do bring up past or what I call parallel life connotations and information?
The best place I find to look for past lives is actually in the karma your chart holds. So when you look at the karma, what you're bringing forward from a past life, what you still need to master and learn in this life, that is where the biggest clues are. So, for example, if someone has 19-1 karma in their chart, that's something I generally only find with really old soul energy. So you're going to find a nine somewhere else in the chart, likely. Um, that karma comes from abuse of power in a past lifetime. And when it's a 19, it's not like a little abuse. It was on an epic scale. You were either high ranking military, and then I look for other fours in the chart. You possibly were royalty, and then I would look for nines and maybe some master numbers in the chart. Sometimes it's a high ranking politician and that shows up under usually 4 or 7 energy. So there's different places and different parts of the chart that will give you clues as to where it possibly came from. Another one that's really interesting is a 13-4, and a lot of famous people have this in their chart. And so 13-4 is abuse of your gifts and talents in a past life. They're really learning about procrastination and not being lazy, working hard, getting things done. That shows up, that someone had, an easier life where they were able to slack off.
Mm. I love that. And it's something I learned yesterday actually was the number eight sometimes can have an association with the Knights Templar and that vibration as well. So it's interesting and also, with the 9/7 energy can bring in um past life connections with um like the Cathars or that sort of very old sort of timeline within Europe. That's um, the Cathars being the alchemists that ended up
Yeah.
finding the ability to turn base metal into gold, and then they were killed by the Pope and the military at the time for discovering their gifts, and of course then they may shy away from tapping into their alchemical abilities because of that genuine fear that they're going to be killed because of it.
No, a lot of that shows up in a chart. Same with if you have 14-5 karma, that's the one that rules addictions. And I find this is really misunderstood by a lot of numerologists. But you're going to learn about addictions from both sides. You're going to learn what it's like to love someone who has an addiction. You're also going to learn what it's like to deal with your own. And people tend to go straight to drugs, sex, alcohol, but maybe you're addicted to screen time and gaming. Maybe you're a workaholic. Maybe you're addicted to control. So it can show up in a lot of different places.
Mm. And you're actually a life path number six, and the six energy is Venus in the color mirror system, which is a beautiful pink energy, which is all about love. How do you feel that you align with your own life path number, and is there any karma associated with that?
When it shows up, there's only certain karmic numbers. And so there's always a lesson associated to every number, but it's not necessarily karma. So the lesson that's associated with a six is the lesson of betrayal. Sixes are fiercely loyal, which I definitely exhibit. I will have your back. Um, it's not when a six says they are loyal to you or they love you, it's not in a romantic comedy kind of way. It's in a ride or die kind of way. So it's intense. And when that loyalty isn't returned, and it seldom is for a six unless you are dealing with another six, you're going to learn that lesson of betrayal. And so it's navigating that, being able to love past it, being able to let go of resentment, forgive. So that's the lesson, the big one that's associated with six energy. But there's always family dynamics there, and just love in general. And you just want to beautify your environment. And I would exhibit all of those things.
Yeah, so you've got the two mind numbers, well, two of the mind numbers, the six and the nine, as very strong influences within your birth chart, which is fantastic. But what about your name? What vibration does that carry?
Well, my soul number is also another nine. And then I have a 19-1 destiny number and a seven maturity number. So I'm not used to talking about my own chart. I feel exposed. This is what people must feel like when they receive a reading. Um, the 19-1 definitely is that past life karma. I have no karmic lessons in my chart. So this is something that comes up once in a while. People with no karmic lessons but karmic debt are on the wheel of karma, as Dolores Cannon would have said. So you could have moved on to another realm to, escaped Earth School, but because you were kind of shady in a past lifetime, I'm here to make up for what I did in my, abuse of power situation. And I definitely have had my share of problems with authority figures. And so when I do see that number, 19 ones really do need to be self-employed or entrepreneurs. They are miserable when they're working for other people and they're scratchy. So it definitely serves them better if they can have their own sandbox.
I love that, and it's interesting that you mentioned there that that vibration of the 19, sort of can relate to the abuse of power in the previous incarnation. Do you know what yours was? Do you know what you did?
Well, apparently it was in royalty, and that tracks because the six is the one that would lend to that. But I've had regressions and things, and that's what I've been told. Specifically what I did, I do not know, but I imagine it perhaps could be, a Marie Antoinette type situation where I was just carefree, spent, and didn't care who I was hurting and very selfish. Hard to say.
So what are the numbers then are really important to you when you're doing a reading for somebody else? What do you look for, and how do you gather that information together to present it in a beneficial way to the recipient?
You really need to look at the chart in its entirety. And most numerology books break everything out. Destiny number five, that's what this means. Destiny number six, this is what this means. And I'm actually writing my second book right now, and I've taken a completely different approach where I read the energy of the number. Um, and I always say, read the placement first, then read the number. So that's what I try and do in all my readings. One of my favorite places to focus if my client is nearing or past 40 is the maturity number, because this number really is what sets the tone for the second half of your life. Um, it's it's just where you have to have that kind of revision of your dreams, and really you have a chance to reinvent yourself and return to your true self as who you were as a child.
So what would be my maturity number?
Yours actually stays the same as your life path. So
Ah,
yours would be a nine. So interesting thing about nine. Um, a nine life path, it is believed that as long as you don't rack up any brand new karma to get you stuck on that wheel of karma, is you can graduate Earth School and move on to another realm.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so excited. Oh my God. I
It
hope.
is exciting. It's a very fortunate finding.
Oh wow, that's really made my day actually. Because I was thinking about the nine yesterday because it came up in a conversation I had with Christine Day, and she was talking about the resonance of the nine. And of course, it's all about completion. And I was thinking, oh, I wonder if this actually means that this could be the completion of this cycle for me. And then I started thinking about all the things I've done wrong in the past.
When I look at your chart, just based on what I know, and I don't have the whole thing, um, you're here on that 16/7 karma from your birthday. So you've got to resolve that before you can graduate. Okay. But the big lesson associated with nine energy is actually that of forgiveness. And so if you're holding on to resentments, if you're not forgiving, and I mean in a profound way, if you don't don't learn that in this lifetime, you'll be back.
Hmm. Interesting because I've worked on a lot of forgiveness, but mainly self-forgiveness. More than resentments I hold towards anybody else because I really have let all of that go. But it's mainly the
Yeah.
self-forgiveness of self that I struggled with the most. So I had to look at guilt being the biggest misunderstanding of all, and that everything is divine. So how can you sit outside of that, the only person in history that got it wrong? So that's helped me to resolve a lot of the guilt that I held towards past actions. So hopefully I've resolved most of that. But you just never know if there's another, little creepy one that's sitting underneath the surface.
Your body actually tells the story on this. So there's always physical indicators as to what people's numbers are. And sometimes I'm just sitting in the car waiting for, something or whatever. And I'll watch people kind of waddle across the parking lot. And I'm like, oh, that's a nine. Their hips are tight. They need a hip replacement. They have forgiveness issues. So, and it'll be a combination of kind of an intuitive download and a knowing, and it's just, I can tell. So, if you are super flexible, you're good. But if you have hip issues of any kind or knee issues, those are indicators that you're holding on to something.
Very interesting. So my knees click and my hips, every morning I have to stretch out my hips. But they are becoming more flexible with yoga and stuff. So, but that it's almost improving with age as
Yeah.
opposed to getting tighter with age, which is quite interesting because I thought it would be the
Well,
reverse.
as you're working on that forgiveness, you'll find more flexibility. I know like pigeon pose and yoga is a great hip opener if you're at all into that. But it holds all of your emotions. And so it's not uncommon actually for yoga instructors to tell you that when people do pigeon pose, sometimes they just start spontaneously crying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting because I went for a massage and it was right in the midst of my shadow period after I left the corporate world. I moved down to a place called Margaret River, which is in the southwest of Australia, and I went to see this amazing massage therapist, and she was using some essential oils and she was going around my hips and my waist, and she said, "Oh," she goes, "Hayden, it feels like you've got like a really thick leather belt around your hips and your waist." And as she worked her magic, I started crying my eyes out, and then I went, "I feel like I've let everybody down," and I started sobbing, and it was like, and then for weeks afterwards, there was a huge shift with with the way I sort of held my body and everything. And before it sort of started creeping back in again. So it's actually really interesting what you're saying about how the body holds the sort of the residue of of the energetic sort of
Yeah.
lessons that you need to kind of learn. And the body will start to heal once that has taken place. So what's the karma then associated with the 16? Because obviously I'm aware that the 16 relates to the Tower card. in traditional tarot, which
Yeah.
is like an explosion of old structures in your life for a consequent clarification. So I know it's, the tower energy, and it's also
Yeah.
it can bring up fears of losing everything or being betrayed or abandoned. Is that right?
Yeah. So in numerology, when you're looking at karmic numbers, you always want to look at the one, the first number will always say that's you. Okay. What were you selfish about? So in your case, the six, now we're looking at everything the six stands for. So you touched on betrayal, which is the lesson of the six,
Yeah.
right? So there's going to be lessons around loyalty, but it ultimately is an abuse of love from a past life. And how it shows up in this life, most commonly in Western civilization, I see it show up as almost a marker sometimes for divorce. They struggle in relationships because the seven can be quite secretive. And that secretiveness comes off to the other person in the relationship, like you're hiding something or you're not being forthcoming. And that's not a strong foundation. So, with that abuse of love from a past lifetime, things are going to happen to you that can be um, hard on your heart, not physically on your heart, but emotionally. And so, I have seen it manifest in many different ways. Nothing that's very uplifting for a podcast, and I don't like giving people, I don't want to put fear into anyone like, oh no, I have this 16, what's happening, like all these bad things are going to happen. Not at all, but I do see it where children are sometimes orphaned when they're younger, or their parents have a really tumultuous divorce. Sometimes when they're older, I see people who've lost a child or a sibling. There's things that are going to happen that will teach you about love.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it's really interesting that you should say that because I'm fully aware of that energy, because it's the phoenix rising out of the ashes as well that comes up, I think. I've got that quite significant in my chart, the number 13. Um I've already been through a lot of those kind of trials and tribulations as I've gone through my life. So my parents had a messy divorce, my mum moved to Australia, my dad's still in the UK. There was all of that happened. Yeah. So there was big and also my husband's born on the 16th of October. So he shares the same birthday as me, but there's 1 year in between us. So we both have been through very similar experiences. And because there is that recognition of the 16, it feels like home. So there is that sort of that
That's one
solitude
of the
within the
most,
relationship.
yeah, it's one of the most common matches I see in successful relationships is that birthday number connecting. My absolute favorite is when the life path and the soul number and then the other soul number and the life path, they form a cross. That's my favorite romantic match. Also, an unbreakable bond is when the soul number matches the maturity number. That's a big one. So there's many places you can look for it, but birthday numbers are really easy to pick up on. So this is kind of the stuff that you're just going, oh, this person, you're making a judgment on sort of who you think they are. That would be, more the personality number. Birthday numbers are easy to pick up on the energy, and that's why people find that attraction.
Hmm. Okay. No, that's brilliant. Well, thank you for delving into that a little bit deeper, and hopefully, anyone who's watching that, has these numbers can identify within your own life, about how it's playing itself out for you and not to be scared, because karmic numbers, yeah, there might be lessons that you need to learn, but they can be resolved right. So what you're saying is if I resolve my 16 energy and really work through the forgiveness, then I can leave the earth school and move on to the next dimension of consciousness.
Well, when I was writing, I was just doing your chart looking for karmic lessons. So I said earlier, I don't have any karmic lessons, so I know I'm on the wheel of karma. You actually only have one, which is pretty good, but you have the lesson of the two. So you also need to fully understand that before you're going to be able to leave Earth School.
So
And
what is that?
the lesson of the two is um, when it shows up that way as a karmic lesson, it's saying that you don't have that energy mastered yet. So the two energy is about patience, cooperation, about teamwork, sharing, all of those things. So it's really learning about relationships and, not being selfish in them. It's kind of a good for the good of all lesson.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's amazing. I love that. And I think that, the two, isn't that also connected to intuition and sensitivity? Can it be overly sensitive energy as well with that?
Well, I would to have it show up that way, I would look for twos in the actual chart, not as a lesson. But
Okay.
yeah, two is one of the most sensitive energies, and that's why they make good mediums, good angel readers, that kind of thing. Um, and they're not just sensitive to energy. They usually have allergies. They usually carry an EpiPen if they're, if they're in tune with their gifts, they're going to be sensitive to everything, very empathic. They have to, make sure they have good spiritual hygiene and they're not picking everything up.
So you mentioned that you don't have any yourself. So is that a good thing?
No karmic lessons. Well, I mean, it doesn't mean I have nothing to learn because all of the numbers always, like I said, carry lessons. So the six is about betrayal, the nine is about forgiveness, the one is about, selfishness and, not being overpowering or overbearing. Um, so I still have things I'm learning, I would say. They're softer in a different form. When it's actual karmic lessons, that's a soul agreement you made before you got here. And so you're going to attract people who can teach you these things. And sometimes I look at a chart and I'll be doing love math, it's what I call it, but I'll be looking at if there's a love match. And you can recognize a karmic relationship through the charts on paper,
Hmm.
where let's say they just only match on karmic debt.
So how specifically?
How specifically would I need more information.
Well, how specifically can you tell, like from their chart?
Well, if someone's soul number is 16/7 and the other person's life path or maturity would be a 16/7, I would know that there's a shared karmic debt, that they were not acting alone. They likely were part of the same situation in a past life. And so it's not everyone you meet with a 16/7. I'd have to find at least three other markers that I look for. So I mean, numerology is so nuanced. It is so in depth. And I've been doing this for 17 years. So it took a while. I didn't, just be able to do that overnight, but it's partly using your intuition, looking for those clues and paying attention.
Yeah, 100%. That's great. So you actually calculate your numbers in a different way to me. So the way you calculate somebody's life path number is by you add the year with the day and the month, don't you? In that way.
I I reduce the month, I reduce the day, I reduce the year, and then I add those three reduced numbers together. And that is the true Pythagorean formula. And so if you're adding numbers straight across, for me, that is always a red flag. I'm like, what kind of numerologist were you talking to? That's not that's not how it's done. When you do it that way, you get false master numbers, you get false karma, and on the flip side of that, you miss a lot of karma and you miss master numbers. So it's really important to reduce the month, reduce the day, reduce the year, and then look at that number. It gives you so much information. It's such a rich resource.
So can you give me an example on how that would work differently then, just so that the viewers understand?
Okay, let's use we use your birthday. Do you want to give me a fake birthday? Okay, we're going to use your birthday. So October is the 10th month. So
Yeah.
I'm taking that and I'm reducing it to a 1. 1 plus 0 equals 1. I'm going to look at the 16. 1 plus 6 equals 7. Okay, so 7. Then we have 1972. 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 2, 19. Okay, so 19 reduces to 10, then 1. So I'm going to add 1 plus 7 plus 1. You're 9. So in that case, there is no missing, your final number isn't a karmic number, but if it was, it would be something you would miss because how you would do it is 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 2. That'll get you to the same number, but in many cases, there's so much missed on your way to that.
Yeah, I can sort of understand that now. And I think that's a really interesting lesson to learn because, the way I would do it, I'd calculate 27 before reducing it to the nine. So I would also pay attention to the number 27.
Yeah, and that I get how you're getting there, but that isn't the way a true Pythagorean numerologist will do
Yeah,
it.
which is great, which is really interesting to observe how, true Pythagorean carries those very, sort of strict rules, don't they? So it goes back to, to
Well, but math isn't gray. Like there's a way to do it and figure it out and get the correct answer, and there's a way not to. And so it's important to follow those strict formulas. So I remember sitting in my grade 10 math exam figuring out my formulas, and none of them were on, like, it was a multiple choice. None of them were choices. None of my answers were choices. And math would, like, if they had taught numerology instead of triangles, I would have done phenomenal, but they didn't. And it was horrible and traumatizing. And I talk about math trauma. It's real. Numerology, if you can add numbers as big as 9, once in a while 11 or 22, you're going to be fine.
So are there any other ways in which you calculate the numbers that differs, would you say,
Well, when I'm doing a name, I use the full birth certificate name, the complete name. And I know some numerologists just use what people go by. That's a vibration, but it absolutely will not tell you what your karmic contract is. It will not tell you what you're here to do. You will not fulfill that destiny that people are like, what is my purpose? That is found in the name spoken at birth.
Great. Okay. So you'd use the maiden name, or would
Yeah.
you'd use the maiden name of
Yeah,
the
and I
lady?
know I have a lot of I've done a lot of trans clients over the past couple of years, and they're very a lot of them refer to it as their dead name, and they want nothing to do with it. They don't even want to tell you what it is. And I explain to them a lot of times that that name actually led them to the experience of becoming who they are now, right? That's the name that holds all of the karma, all of the lessons, all of the experiences that brought them to transitioning, which is what their soul wanted to do in this lifetime. So it's so important.
Yeah, I can see how important it is. And it's very interesting how Chaldean numerology, really focuses around the name chart and how their calculations are done so differently. And it's quite interesting for me to observe, during my discussions how, like a Pythagorean numerologist and a Chaldean numerologist, both feel like they're right as well, which, is really interesting because both are right in a way. But it does bring up different results. It does.
I find for Western world, Pythagorean resonates most. I feel if you're perhaps, in a different part of the world, maybe you'll resonate more to the Chaldean.
Ah, interesting. So in a way, it's a little bit like Australian bushflower essences, where if you live in the southern hemisphere, they're good, but if you're living in Europe, then you're better off having the Bach flower essences.
That's a great analogy. But I mean, when you're basing something on 8 letter, on a different alphabet, on, the numbers, they all work so differently. I don't know as much about it as I could, but I also don't feel I need to because that's not my lane. I stay in my lane over here in the Pythagorean zone.
Great, good, and it's wonderful that you've mastered it so well. Now you also work with personal year cycles, and so how can someone use their current year number to make empowered decisions and flow more easily with life's rhythms, do you think?
Yeah, it's probably the most brilliant gift numerology has to offer is that personal cycle. You can make decisions, know when to take action, know when to wait, know, is this the right time? Anything. Why am I not getting pregnant? Well, you're in a 9 year. You don't even want to be pregnant right now. There's different things. So I deal with infertility dating, and a lot of times it's based on the numbers, and you need to look at both people's chart who are involved and, you know, make sure that it's harmonious for creating that new life. Um, but even if you're changing jobs, things that start under nine energy generally don't have staying power. And so what they do is offer a bridge to where you really need to go. But if you start a relationship in a 9 year, sure, you might end up dating his brother or, something else. But maybe he introduces you to someone you do end up in a relationship with. But that relationship will only be a bridge. It doesn't really have staying power. Same with if you start a job.
Yeah, so is it
You
always best to start in a one, would you say?
well, not necessarily. So I've started jobs in a nine, and before I was a numerologist, but retrospectively looking back, one job I took, I was really excited about who I was going to be working for. I thought he was brilliant and I would learn a lot. And I worked there about just over 2 months and he left the company. And the new boss, I don't think I learned anything from her except, how to deal with toxic people. So there were still lessons, but it wasn't the experience I was looking for. But what that job did, it moved me to another city. In that city, I met my husband. I also got another job, and that job, I had a huge, beautiful career, um, you know, selling wine and spirits and all of that kind of stuff. So it was the stepping stone I needed to get me moved to a new city, which ultimately I still live in. And, that's where my destiny was. That's where my opportunity lied.
What personal year are you in now, Joy?
I'm in an 11-2 personal year.
Are you? So this is good for what specifically?
Well, I always say when you hit 11, any master number year, when you hit that, there's always a destined event. And so it's about relationships, it's about forming partnerships. Usually in an 11 year, people will get an intuitive upgrade or their intuition will be super heightened. A lot of times in 11-2 year, I see people who have a relationship that ends. A lot of times there's a significant passing of someone. Um, but you can go pretty dark with numerology if you want to. I'm trying to keep it light. But in an 11-2 year, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to see people who lose a parent, or, get married. So you're on both sides of it, right? Are you adding or are you subtracting?
Mm. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
understand that.
So for me, this is a destined year. I signed with a literary agent last time. I'm writing my second book. That's that's pretty big.
That's massive.
And
It's massive.
we're only, we're in April. There's still a lot of year left.
There's a lot of year left. And actually, the two energy, if I look at my pyramids, my final peak is at the age of 54 for me. So that's when I go into a two for the rest of my life. So, that can be a very emotional and sensitive time, and there can be a focus around partnerships. So I wonder if that period will help me with, that karmic stuff that I've got with the two about teamwork and relationships. Would that be supportive, that period, for overcoming some of that karma?
Yeah, absolutely. And because you're missing the two, like it shows up as that lesson, you're gonna have a really big opportunity, like 50, do you say 54 on to work
Yeah.
on it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. I've just put two and two together with that, literally. Which is great because I was wondering what that's going to be like because I'm in a seven peak at the moment, like which obviously they last for 9 years, and that's I think why I'm doing what I'm doing, sort of doing the spiritual teaching stuff and delving deeply and learning a lot. But yeah, the two, it worried me a little bit because I was thinking, oh, I wonder if this is going to be a really sensitive period, where I'm going to be just feeling like a lot of the old emotional stuff coming back up, or how is it going to play itself out? But I suppose it depends on whether you're living positively or negatively, doesn't it?
Always about the vibration, whether you're at the high or low and what that experience will look like. The the one that seems to be the most challenging is when people hit a one in their third or fourth um, pinnacle. So I know for my husband, that's when he had his first divorce. I think he was around 33 or 35. So it's that, 1 year, like everything coming down, getting ripped apart, new start, but it's very short. It only lasts 1 year. That one is more difficult to deal with later in life. But every other number serves a purpose, and there, there's no good or bad numbers.
So what are you in? What's your peak that you're in?
My
What's the
last two are six, and so I've been doing that since I was 30 something, and it mine doesn't change.
so all that six energy? That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
That
a
is
lot.
all this focus around love,
Yes, love, teaching, beautifying,
creativity,
creativity.
beauty, aesthetics, gorgeous. Beautiful. I love that. That sounds idyllic. Now, we also have a universal year number, don't we? And of course, we're in a nine in 2025. So if, say, for example, like I'm currently in my personal year eight, but I'm in a universal year nine, how would that play itself out?
Well, the universal year impacts things like politics, pandemics, global news cycles, things like that. Your personal year is what's going to impact you the most. And then I'd always pay attention to your personal month. But when you can get on that cycle and really know what's happening, like I go right back down to the day and I don't really worry about what's happening in the collective. Like, but if you look at what I said about nine energy, things that don't really stick that happen in a nine, how many times have we had tariffs on and off in the last 30 days? Like, it's, they're not sticking, are they?
No, they're not. It's
I mean, I'm
interesting.
Canadian, you're Australian, all good, but it's interesting to watch, right? But I think that's such a good example of what I was talking about, where things just don't stick.
That just don't stick. Yeah. But it also brings in that sort of war energy in the zeitgeist, doesn't it? And the fiery stuff, which, and also ambition as well, it can play itself out within, that the way a person operates. I mean, I was thinking, I'm glad that I'm not in a personal year nine in a universal year nine because you can become overly ambitious if the nine is all consuming. And so I think that it's it's great to become aware of how both are impacting on your your experience and how you can actually sort of use that energy to temper some of the things that maybe you need to become aware of so that they don't become problematic.
Okay. Yeah, so anyone with a nine attitude, which would be their month and their day added together, anyone that has that adding to nine would also be in a 9 year this year. So because it's 2025, adds up to a nine, everybody is in their personal year of their attitude number. So it's a very easy year for everybody to figure out. what where they're at. So month plus day will tell you your personal year.
Yeah, absolutely. Because nine never loses its integrity, does it? It doesn't matter what you do with the number nine, it always kind of stays the same. It's an amazing number. It really is. And it was okay. Well, I think I really appreciate what you've said about that. It's helped bring a lot of clarity to me and hopefully to, the viewers as well. Um, if we look at, purpose and power with regards to numerology, in your view, how can numerology help people align more fully with their purpose, especially when they're feeling lost or unsure about where they're going?
Yeah, the I'd look to your destiny number first, which is the complete total of your birth certificate name. When you can find something that aligns your destiny number with your soul number, those are the people that never work a day in their life. Now, not everybody's are harmonious, and a lot of people have contradictions in their chart, but you want to look to that destiny number to really find, like, what am I supposed to be doing? And your birthday number will tell you your gifts, so you can look there. And I really can't stress enough how valuable the maturity number is. Um, Obviously your life path is such a giant umbrella over your entire life, but that maturity number reveals your true self. It's who you were before the world got their hands on you and you got tainted and were told who to be or how to act. So if you can remember what you were like between the ages of 0 and 4, maybe 5, then we start school and we start getting tainted. So you can remember what you were like then. Those are the big clues to what you should be doing, where you're going. And you step into that number around 40, and then you're fully integrated by 50. And so that's where you hear people say, I feel like I'm my in my true skin. I feel like I found myself at 50. You hear people say things like that all the time. And so that is strictly based on that maturity number. It's amazing.
So what was mine? Am I a one?
Yours stays 9.
Oh, it stays nine. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yours is the 19, is it? Yeah.
No, mine's a 7.
Oh.
And so 7 is the spiritual seeker. 7 is the curious, you know, um, all that metaphysical science and everything rule is under that number. They do their research, they're thorough. As a child, I asked questions constantly, and I was not happy with the answers ever. I was never satisfied. And it's developing that intuition. It's like Deepak Chopra is a 7. He's a good famous example of someone who's a 7. And he has no karmic lessons. So that's very interesting. Um, yeah, so if you look at that maturity number, if it changes completely, which mine did, you can become a completely different person. And I truly have absolutely reinvented myself. I went from corporate and I was hardcore. I was absolutely expected everyone to work as hard as I did, which I now realize was like why? Like I'm so not that person anymore. But that's what my chart evolved, and it was always going to.
So that's a really good example of how someone's life can completely pivot once the maturity number kicks in. So mine isn't going to change then.
Yours isn't going to change. Yeah, and I also had a name change in there because I got married. I changed my name. Um, so that gives you sort of another layer of energy, but it doesn't change your soul contract.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So what's your, just a bit more light-hearted now. What's your favorite number
Oh, my favorite number? I have to say 9.
and why?
Well, they're the humanitarians. They're generous and they're smart and funny. And, like I say, there's no good or bad numbers, but 9 energy has a kindness to it and all knowing. Um, and it just makes you feel like, for me, that's also my heart number. And so it makes me feel like I'm home. My husband's a nine life path.
Ah, well, there you go
Mhm.
then. So that's probably why we connect as well. Hey, and is there any myth or misconception about numerology that you'd love to debunk once and for all?
I I just would like people to research who they're getting advice from. So if you're going to buy a book, just do a quick Google. Is this person a numerologist, or is this self-published, plagiarized nonsense? Like, do you know what I mean? Do they know what they're talking about? Same with astrology, same with any metaphysical science. Just Google the author. If they are writing a book on a subject, you would like to know that they have, something to offer, some history. I actually found a book online when I was doing some research on numerology, written by Joy DeCause. Hans DeCause. I mean,
Mhm.
I think he's near 80. He's written a couple books, very well respected numerologist. So my book is newer, more modern. So they took the name of a bestseller on Amazon now and combined my name with his name. And I Googled, I thought, oh, does Hans DeCause have a daughter? No, Joy DeCause does not exist. She's a ghost, but she has a book.
That's shocking. It's
Horrified,
absolutely, I bet you were.
horrified.
Did you report it?
There's, there's nothing, no, there's nothing. I mean, I just release it right away and I trust that the universe, like, I mean, my book is doing phenomenal still. It's 5 years old. I'm writing my second. It's great. But that's where I'm just telling people to be careful because I would hate for someone to buy that book and, think that they were either getting me or Hans.
100%. It's the world we live in, unfortunately, isn't it? Now, just to wrap things up today, was there anything specific that you feel like that you wanted to speak about that we didn't cover off today in any great depth, and something that you feel is going to profoundly make a difference to the viewer?
Well, I mean, I could talk about numerology for days and days and days. And so I would just encourage people, the easiest thing you can do is find your personal year. And I have calendars on my website that, like I said, break it down right to the day. That is a good place to start. Um, it really will give you an insight and an easy way to go, oh, wow, I see this. This is real. And you can catch the bug. Angel numbers are another way they're kind of a gateway to numerology a lot of times. True angel numbers will always add up to 3, 6, or 9. 111 is a 3, 222 is a 6, 333 is a 9, 444 is 12, then it's a 3. And so where people get caught up now going, what does it mean when you see 1241? Like, it means 1241, unless you're born in December and like maybe December 5th or something. It's hard to say, right? But people really stretch it to look for, they want that divine guidance. Keep it simple, figure it out. You always want to look at the total of an angel number. Like if it's 333, well, now it's a 9. It's probably a creative solution to a problem. Something's coming to an end. Do you know what I mean? It's about expansion. So if you look at angel numbers from a root of numerology, they start making sense. But when you're looking at channeled or, you know, TikTok, I don't know. I don't know where your information's coming from. I don't know how good your channel was.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And maybe that's something we could delve into a bit deeper in a future episode, Joy, to really delve into the angel number phenomenon, because I have touched upon it with Novelli Wilder. And, so it was quite interesting to get her perspective. But I think that you could add an extra dimension of information into that particular aspect of numerology if you'd be happy to do that later on down the track.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah, and
amazing.
there are angel numbers that show up different ways. Like sometimes I see 1127 and that's my birthday and I always look at that as okay, I'm on the right track. I'm I'm, that's a sign like we got you. So,
Yeah, you get that sort of
there are
moment.
yeah, and if you see a friend's birthday, maybe they need some assistance. Maybe you just want to give them a little shout, see what's going on. So there are other numbers, but yeah, the real true angel numbers, um, they add up to three, six, or nine.
That's so interesting because a lot of people think 1111 is, whoo,
Oh, 1111 is definitely that. I guess that one would be a little different. That's master numbers though. So if it's not a master number, then it needs to be 369. For
okay.
master numbers, they get a pass. I should have clarified that.
Great. Oh, good. I'm glad that you've kind of debunked that because I would have gone off and like completely dismissed every time I ever see it
Yeah.
again
Well,
as just
but
mumbo
really,
jumbo.
1111, I mean, not as much as I used to. That number is actually evolving into 1010 and 1212. People are now saying that's the natural evolution. And that 1111 um, is really a doorway. And that's the one people see at the beginning of their spiritual journey. That's where they start seeing 1111 everywhere. So when you learn numerology or you learn to pay attention to the signs, you learn the language of numbers, the universe will start speaking to you in it.
100%. Yeah, that was how it happened for me, all those years ago when I was 16 and I started seeing it everywhere. And it's very confrontational. But so it just means that that person is starting to become aware of their multi-dimensional nature, would you say? Is there anything else that it represents?
Most most obviously, it's that beginning of the spiritual journey is where I see people who are asking about it. Some people are on a muggle journey. They're never going to awaken. They don't want to. And that's not what their soul contract has provided for them in this lifetime. I do think there's always high, low vibration of everything. So it's available to anyone at any time if they wanted to step onto the spiritual path and have soul quest. But it's not for everyone.
It's not.
We have to just learn how to coexist.
Yeah, it's the road less traveled, isn't it? I think, so it's one of those things that you're either gonna, go through your life completely asleep or you're going to, find an event that helps to waken you up. And unfortunately, that's often through trauma, isn't it? Or that there being some sort of catalyst or some sort of
Well, the dark night of the soul, right? That's
mm,
that's a very real thing. Oh,
yeah.
you thought this was bottom? That's not bottom.
Exactly.
There's a sub basement.
You wait. Yeah, you wait until you get there and wait till your father gets home.
But ultimately, it's all part of like, it's really all about soul evolution. That's what we're here for. We are here to evolve our souls, to become better people, to become more skilled.
And it's
We want to
also it's not
keep
just about you, it's about, the influence and impact that you have on others and the,
absolutely.
how that, your role in life plays out and uplifts the people around you, which is probably what really we go to when we have our near-death experience and our life review. It's always based around how your actions and thoughts and feelings have impacted on the people around you. So with an intention of wanting to uplift, and using numerology as a tool to be able to do that, I think that, it's good juju.
It's
Joy.
good. Well, it's it definitely helps me understand people, understand difficult people, and just, you know, what they are possibly dealing with. And everybody has a story. We tend to get caught up in our own little worlds, but everybody has a story.
Mm, 100%. We don't know what that person's story is that's led them up to that event. and that takes you into that place of non-judgment, so you can't judge anything or anyone because you don't know what their soul evolution is all about, so um
Well, and you go to compassion,
mm,
right? If you really understand someone where they're what they've been through or done or experienced, like, oh, I see you were bullied. This is about unhealed trauma. Now you're passing it on. Okay, I feel sorry for you. That's real life for you. I'll be over here, not being a bully, being kind, sending
mm.
you love from afar.
Beautiful. It's lovely that, to see how, numerology really has been a great foundation for you in your own life as well, to develop that sense of awareness, your self-awareness and more compassion, So it is it's also that tool I think that we can harness to be able to, ascend into the next layer of, consciousness. So thank you
Well,
so much once
self-aware,
again.
yeah, self-awareness really helps you develop emotional intelligence. And if you don't have emotional intelligence, you can't have um, healthy relationships. They fuel toxic relationships. So you need to develop the self-awareness, give you the emotional maturity, and then you can have healthy relationships.
Mm. Love it. Well, hopefully, that's something that I obviously need to still work on being that, having that karmic too. So I'll be
Oh,
working on that
you
from
gotta
here.
work on the forgiveness. That's your big one.
Forgiveness. Yeah. Yeah. It always comes up as a theme. That's why I wear magenta a lot, you see. Bottle number 22 in the color mirrors is called Forgiveness, and it's
Huh?
magenta in color. So magenta is that kind of that bridge between earth and heaven, and it helps to resolve and release old guilt, which can is a low vibration energy, So no, I appreciate you saying that, and thanks so much again, Joy, for sharing your wisdom and your warmth and your joyful energy with us today. Your passion for numerology is absolutely contagious, and I know our listeners, are walking away feeling more aligned, more empowered, and inspired to dive deeper into the sacred language of numbers. So, where can people find you, Joy?
They can find me at joyofnumerology.com. It's also across my socials. But joyofnumerology.com. If they sign up for my newsletter, I don't bomb you. I don't have time. But when I do send something out, it's pretty interesting. So people could start there. There's a soul release letter if anyone's interested on a forgiveness exercise that's pretty impactful on my blog they can check out. But yeah, sign up for the newsletter and then you'll get notice when I'm on a podcast like yours or when I have something profound to say.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm sure that many people watching today will just see you as, a real authority on your subject, and I, myself included. It's just amazing to see how much you've delved deeply into the subject of Pythagorean numerology, and thank you for doing that. It's very much needed. So remember that your numbers are not just here to limit you, they're here to liberate you. So trust the process, tune into your path, and keep shining your unique light onto the planet. So until next time, stay magical and keep decoding your destiny. Bye for now.